I want your thoughts and your calls on this. Should locals be able to block high street vape shops? Pick up the phone. Let us know your thoughts. 0207 862 2222 is the number that you need. So deprived parts of the UK are set to receive tens of millions of pounds to regenerate their high streets, their areas. It's part of the Prime Minister's Pride of Place programme. 300 areas will have powers to patch up derelict shops, pubs and libraries, but they will also have the power to decide which businesses can open on their high streets. So streets plagued with gambling shops and vape shops could become a thing of the past. Now, it's hoped that the programme will ease voters' anger about Britain's broken communities. So do you think it's a good plan to give this power to local authorities? Alice, what do you reckon?
I worry that this is a power that can be misused. We've seen many times when you allow people the power to block housing developments, for example, NIMBYs get in the way of things that can be ultimately good for growth. I think it sets a worrying precedent. I mean, of course, people don't like to see these vape shops and so on in their high streets because they're a sign of deprivation. But if you set a precedent that you can object to a business on a moral basis, then where does it end? What if you didn't want, say, a left-wing bookshop or any other kind of business on your high street? So I worry that it could potentially stand in the way of what we need to do for growth. And I also think it's treating a symptom rather a cause, right? Because these derelict high streets are a sign of deprivation. What we need is growth to get our high streets thriving again, not powers to tinker around the edges. OK. Gemma, we're going to hear from you after the break. I know you have a lot to say on this.
Don't go anywhere. What a left-wing bookshop is.
Well, any other kind of business that you might
only.
Don't start now. Right, we're going to take a quick break, after which we'll be hearing from Gemma and also taking your calls on this. Do you think that local communities should have the power to block things like high street vape shops or gambling establishments? So don't forget, also later we're going to be debating if the UK as a whole needs a minimum price for alcohol. They've done it in Scotland. Should the rest of the UK follow suit? 0207 862 2222 is the number that you need. Let's get straight into your calls and your thoughts on whether locals should be able to block high street vape shops and gambling establishments. We heard from Alice just before the break. Gemma, what about you? Do you think that we should give that much power to local people to decide what's on their high street?
Yeah, I think this is incredibly positive, and I think that, I know we were just talking about Starmer and, you know, I just really stuck up for Burnham, but I do think part of Starmer's plan is if we can make improvements, by the time we get to the election, people might just vote for us because we've done some good stuff. And I think this is part of that. So by tackling the problem that millions of people feel like their local area is abandoned, it's broken. You go to the high street, it's depressing, it's gambling shops, vape shops, shuttered up youth clubs, hasn't had any investment for years. So this would be what Johnson set out to do, levelling up, never happened. So it would be a positive form of that by saying, all right, here are the funds, and then you sort out your own area with a feeling of a little more empowerment and say, and you take a little bit of that back for your community. And what you don't want is high streets which look like clones with these blooming vape shops being so prolific, which are not great.
But then if the high street has a choice, Gemma, of a vape shop next to a gambling shop, next to a pawn shop, or 3 empty lots, then what do you do?
Well, I would assume that by having these funds, they would choose to have perhaps one thing that is better than those 3 things combined and start to grow in a meaningful, organic way. So you end up living in a place that is appealing. Okay. And that isn't that utterly depressing. And you have got to think about, like, local democracy, local accountability, and you might encourage, you know, OK, well, we have to bring the rents down then, and then you can go in there and you've got a year to make a little business viable. Part of the problem is extortionate rates.
I mean, well, part of that problem, also planning rules need to change. Labour MP Dawn Butler, friend of the show as well, has been running a campaign to try and curb the amount of gambling establishments that are allowed to open in high streets, because at the moment, the 2005 Gambling Act, there's something in the planning rules called aim to permit. Yeah. So the councils are instructed to actually try and permit gambling establishments to open. And quite a lot of communities, you know, they've got 2 or 3 gambling establishments. They don't want a 4th, 5th or 6th one.
And that they haven't got a really nice place to gather to, you know, something much more healthy. But
so it is about giving power back to communities. But then again, that might actually get in the way of growth, as Alice was saying. Joan's in Manchester. Joan, how do you feel about this? Should local communities have more power in deciding who can open a shop on their high street and who can't?
I'm not sure about the power.
Yeah.
I was just ringing up to say, why do we even need vape shops? I mean, people that smoke normal cigarettes, you don't have just a shop with cigarettes in it. They're just like promoting vape as though it's this fabulous thing, you know, and they're so highly lit and all singing, all dancing, all colours, attracting, you know, youngsters. But why do we need vape shops? Because in the first place, they were introduced to stop people smoking.
Yeah, I think we're past that though now, Joan, aren't we?
Yeah, because even though you've gone on to vape, you're still smoking.
Yeah.
You're still putting bad in your lungs. But, you know, why do we need them when you can buy them out of supermarkets or newsagents? Why do we need a specific vape shop?
Well, so Joan, would you then support this idea so that a community should say, look, why do we need a vape shop? We don't want one. You can't open one on our high street.
Well, yeah, because you could, like I've just said, you can buy them in a supermarket or a newsagent.
But then with that logic then, and then I think this is Alice's concern, wouldn't that then spread to, well, actually, you can gamble on your phone and you can gamble on another betting shop somewhere. We've already got one. We don't want 2 or 3. I mean, then the community's starting to take decisions that perhaps may have a bigger knock-on effect of what they want and what they don't want.
Yeah. Well, where I live, there's about, I would say, 4 betting shops, and I've only been in one once. That was for the Grand National.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's very few high streets with just one on there. Joan, thank you for starting us off.
Yep. Just the high streets kind of reflect how your local economy is doing. And it tends to be seaside towns, deprived areas where you walk down the high street and it's thoroughly horrible, really, because you've got a lot of betting shops and a lot of vape shops.
But I think that's exactly why sort of the odd 20 grand here and there to your community isn't the answer. What we need is a growing economy that spreads everywhere. And I also think there is another issue with these vape shops, and I get people's frustration in London with this big problem with American sweet shops, which I think are essentially just fronts for money laundering. So there is a crime aspect to this as well, which again won't be solved by just a little bit of levelling up money.
Yeah.
I think money solves a lot, and I think if these places have not been invested in, giving them money to put into something that they think is positive for their community is a really strong idea.
OK, Jean's in London. Jean, welcome to the show. Do you think we need to give more power to the local communities to choose what they put on their high streets?
Well, yes, I do. I do in a way, because I live in West London, and Ealing Council, I'm going to name them, name and shame. Ealing Council have absolutely ruined our area with the things
what have they done?
Brought in. They built a mini Manhattan in Ealing Broadway. Like a mini Manhattan. We had a little 2-storey human sort of area.
Sorry, Jean, we're confused, we're all looking at each other. What's a mini Manhattan?
A mini Manhattan is New York.
But how?
A mini Manhattan is the type of architecture.
Oh, right, I see. You mean the buildings have just...
The building, yeah.
Right, skyscrapers going up.
So,
right.
And these vape shops and all the rest of it, they've ruined a nice area. We had diverse shops in, with cobbler shops, cleaning shops, different supermarkets, the Athena art shop, things like that. It was wonderful when I first came here.
And what is there? What's there now? Give us a picture.
What's there now? A boarded up shop, mostly boarded up shops, which could be put to good use of one kind or another, either homes for the homeless or some new sort of intimate shops like we used to have, where people could go in, browse around, buy things, and not all this having to keep. We have to keep protesting because it's the only thing we can do.
Yeah, Jean, thank you. Sorry, I'm only cutting it short because I know there's a few people waiting to speak to us, but I'm sure that you describe a situation that's very familiar to quite a few people up and down the country, so thank you for doing so. Tim's in Merseyside. Tim, welcome to the show. What do you make of this, the idea of giving people more power to decide what's in their high street rather than leaving it up to the councils?
Well, I would say then, who's going to get to decide? Because, the local people in a local area, they're not some monolithic entity.
Yeah.
You're going to get different competing interests. So who's going to get to decide
Local
who gets
authorities.
this share of the taxpayers' money that's on offer?
Well, as
Now,
Jemma
is it gonna
saying, maybe
end up being
local authorities or people being able to object to say, look, we've already got 3 vape shops, we don't need a 4th one.
Well, if it's going to be down to local authorities, why isn't it down to local authorities in the first place? Because, what I was trying to say was, is it going to come down to eventually those who make the most noise, whereas those who are at least able to make a noise are going to be the ones that lose out? It's fraught with all sorts of difficulties.
But what's the solution, though, Tim? How do you get those high streets to go back? Maybe they will never go back to what they used to be, but there's a lot of things you can do online, but there's also a lot of things that you have to do in person. Beauty salons, haircuts, cafes. I'm sure people would much rather have those things, those live experience shops in their communities, rather than seeing them being boarded up or turning into barber shops, vape shops and gambling shops.
Well, I think that what will happen to me is, unfortunately, some things are going to have to be made less local, whereas local authorities, they're going to have to be a reform of planning rules, so they can hold things up to a lesser extent, and there need to be more restrictions on business rates. Some local authorities are just forcing businesses out with the rates they charge.
Yeah, Tim, thank you. Oh, that's a hugely important point, to be fair, because most of the places that end up being boarded up, sometimes not because the business didn't work, but because they've been squeezed out by
tax.
But a lot of it is legislation as well, and that's the point. They'd be giving extra power to local authorities to be able to vet things more.
Yeah, but are you going to be able to regulate how much landlords are going to be wanting for that rent on that high street? I'm not sure you're going to be able to do that. But thank you all for your calls on that and your messages. Don't forget...